All right, well, we want to welcome you to our next presentation in our All About Alzheimer's or ALZ monthly series, where, as usual, we want to bring you useful information that you can take back with you to your respite group, your support group, or those you're caring for in your home or in your social support system. It's a pleasure to be with you here today, as always, virtually, that is. For those of you who don't know my name is Joan Asseff, and I am a licensed clinical social worker here in the state of Texas. I've spent most of my career working with older adults in a wide array of settings, including skilled nursing, hospice, home health, psychiatric care, and private clinical practice. And I now teach clinical social work at the Steve Hicks School of Social Work at the University of Texas at Austin. I've worked extensively with individuals and caregivers going through the extreme challenges of Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. And I want to recognize, as I have in the past, the selfless and painstaking work it takes to provide these services and to take care of those for whom we care. So I'm honored to be here with you today and go over what I hope will be some helpful information. Just a quick note about Alzheimer's Texas before we get started. Many of you know a lot about Alzheimer's Texas, but for those of you who don't, Alzheimer's Texas is an independent local nonprofit that used to be known as the Alzheimer's Association Capital of Texas chapter. They've been a privately funded voluntary health organization since 1982, serving Central Texans with Alzheimer's disease and their caregivers. About 3 or 4 years ago, Alzheimer's Texas broke away to form their own nonprofit and decided to focus 100% of their funds and efforts here in Central Texas. However, Alzheimer's Texas maintains the same level of commitment, providing support, education, and advocacy for those affected by Alzheimer's in our community. So what do we hope to learn today? We want to understand descriptions of various mindfulness strategies that can be helpful for caregivers. We want to identify the potential benefits and limitations of mindfulness approaches for dementia caregivers. We also hope to learn strategies for applying mindfulness-based interventions to the real challenges dementia caregivers face. And then, as usual in our sessions together, we want to think about and share ways that we can apply and educate others about these strategies. So what is mindfulness? This is a good place to start. In the Western world, mindfulness-based interventions are becoming widely accepted methods of addressing the symptoms associated with many commonly experienced mental health challenges and or emotional concerns. Mindfulness approaches have their roots in ancient Buddhist traditions such as Zen meditations. The term mindfulness has proven difficult to define due to differing beliefs of what exactly mindfulness is, differing opinions on how to achieve mindfulness, and varied views about the purpose of mindfulness. However, mindfulness may generally be understood as the state in which one becomes more aware of one's physical, mental, and emotional condition in the present moment without becoming judgmental. And that's a really important feature of mindfulness. Individuals may be able to pay attention to a variety of experiences, such as bodily sensations, cognitions, and feelings, and accept them without being influenced by them. Mindfulness practices are believed to be able to help people better control their thoughts rather than be controlled by them. And these techniques are increasing in popularity in the physical and mental health fields, schools, businesses, the entertainment industry, for example, and the military as well. So I want to take some time to describe the research and history behind mindfulness-based interventions to better understand how these strategies might be beneficial for caregivers experiencing a wide range of stressors. A basic definition of these strategies includes interventions that promote the practice of mindfulness as an important part of good health, both physical and mental health. Currently, there are 4 recognized therapy models that incorporate mindfulness practices. Before I go over these, I want to be clear that these are therapeutic approaches that are best initiated and initially guided by a trained therapist or mental health practitioner. I'm sharing these so our audience today is aware that more formal and structured therapeutic approaches provided by mental health professionals could be very beneficial for some caregivers struggling with anxiety, depression, or other mental health symptoms. I will also go over some mindfulness strategies today that are commonly utilized by individuals with or without a therapist or trained mental health professional. So we'll talk about both. So with that caveat, I will share that in the 1970s, John Kabat-Zinn founded a mindfulness-based stress reduction program and was one of the first individuals to attempt to integrate Buddhist principles of mindfulness into his work in science and in medicine. Also in the 1970s, Marsha Linehan developed dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT, with the aid of certain Western and Eastern spiritual influences. About a decade later, acceptance and commitment therapy was introduced in the late 1980s by Stephen Hayes, Kelly Wilson, and Kirk Stroessel, and also incorporates Eastern ideas and techniques. Following their work, Zendel Siegel, Mark Williams, and John Teasdale built upon Kabat-Zinn's work to develop mindfulness-based cognitive therapy at the beginning of the 21st century. So as we can see from this brief history and overview, mindfulness interventions have been steadily integrated into our mental health service provision in this country over the past approximately 50 years or so. So why are mindfulness interventions a great fit for dementia caregivers? Well, simply put, people caring for loved ones with Alzheimer's disease or other dementias experience many of the challenges and stressors that mindfulness interventions address. For example, a recent systematic review reported that caregivers of persons with dementia show elevated stress, no surprise, right? And poorer attention and executive function performance. Furthermore, caregivers of persons with dementia show increased levels of anxiety and depression. And studies have reported that caregiving for a person with dementia may be particularly stressful when compared to other forms of caregiving. Again, none of this surprising to those of us who work with and support dementia caregivers or who may be caregiving ourselves. As I will share in just a few moments, mindfulness interventions have been shown to be effective in decreasing many of the symptoms that I have just described. Additionally, many mindfulness approaches can be performed by caregivers themselves over a short period of time with little preparation, and sometimes really no preparation is needed. These approaches are well suited for busy caregivers who rarely have extra minutes or extra time to spare each day. The great news is that research has generally found many benefits for people utilizing mindfulness approaches, including the areas of functioning you see here: cognitive, emotional, psychological, the ability to pay attention, memory, executive function, processing speed, self-awareness, and emotion regulation. So many benefits that research has shown associated with mindfulness approaches. Even or better or just as good news is that research is beginning to show that mindfulness approaches have specific benefits unique to dementia caregivers, such as improvement in depression, anxiety, self-efficacy, and their ability to actually practice mindfulness as well. Research has also shown improvements in stress, caregiver burden, social support, and quality of life, and mood disturbance as well. While intuitively it makes sense that a practice focused on increasing one's awareness of physical, mental, and emotional needs might benefit caregivers, the research is also showing us that in fact, these interventions are actually helpful for many dementia caregivers. So I wanted to, as any good professor and clinician, talk about some limitations as well. I want to recognize that mindfulness, as widely as applied, as it is widely applied, is also limiting in some ways, or cannot be totally relied upon for folks with some conditions. And so we want to be real open and clear about that. The research on the effects of mindfulness-based interventions is inconclusive or only preliminary for the following challenges or conditions that you see listed here. It's important to remember that if caregivers are experiencing any of these conditions, along with the typical stressors of being a caregiver, mindfulness-based interventions might not meet their specific therapeutic and coping needs. It's also important to remember that mindfulness-based interventions, while generally showing significant benefit in larger populations, have not been confirmed as beneficial in some subgroup populations. So really more research needs to be done for some subgroups and some diagnostic areas. So just something important to keep in mind as you are supporting yourself or supporting those in the community. If they have a broader spectrum of mental health needs, then certainly, connecting them with a mental health professional is recommended overall. So I want to provide a fairly comprehensive list today of mindfulness-based interventions for your reference, though we will not go over each one of these in depth today for the sake of time. The first column you see here lists techniques that fall under the category of mindfulness meditation techniques, and they are often facilitated, at least initially, by a trained mental health professional. As I mentioned, I always recommend that each person check with their doctor and or their mental health provider before trying some of these interventions on their own. While they are generally straightforward and pose little risk for most people, they could be difficult or potentially distressing for people with untreated histories of trauma or other mental health challenges. So please do check with your health providers before trying any of the strategies in the first column. So for the purposes of a brief overview, I'll provide a general description of some of these strategies that you see here so that you are more knowledgeable and can share with others or support yourself by accessing some of these. First, generally, breathing and focusing on your breath is a commonly utilized mindfulness approach that probably many of you, if not everyone, is somewhat familiar with. By focusing on your breath, you are learning to control the flow of oxygen that enters and exits your body each time you take a breath, especially a deep breath. Although it might feel strange at first for those who aren't used to doing these exercises, with some repetition, this practice can help improve both mental and physical health overall, and research really shows that. The breathing exercises often focus on diaphragmatic breathing or deep breathing from the diaphragm rather than the chest. Although we are all capable of breathing this way, very few of us do in our everyday lives during our daily routines. Next, we have the body scan meditations. Body scan meditation is one type of mindfulness meditation which promotes greater awareness of the physical body. It uses physical sensations and visualization as an anchor to root the mind in the physical body and in the present moment. It may be incorporated into a yoga class or used as a practice in its own right. And then we have guided imagery, which is another commonly utilized mindfulness-based intervention. Typically, a therapist using this approach will provide verbal prompts to direct the focus of the imagery, often encouraging the participant to notice various sensory aspects of a scene. A person in therapy may, for example, be asked to envision a peaceful place, including in this vision any smells or aromas, sounds, and textures present in the image. In this way, guided therapeutic imagery expands beyond visualization because it involves all five senses. Guided imagery is designed to impact the body as well as the mind, and breathing typically becomes slower and more controlled during the process while muscles relax, creating a state of calm and relaxation. Some practitioners may use music as part of this technique as well. Progressive muscle relaxation is also a widely utilized mindfulness strategy. These exercises involve tensing and relaxing different groups of muscles in your body until it becomes more natural to find and remain in a state of physical relaxation. This technique takes a little time and practice, but eventually you should find yourself able to fully relax your body in a few minutes, if not a matter of seconds. Repeating a phrase is a more readily accessible and easily applied mindfulness-based intervention that probably many of you are familiar with and might do in your own everyday life. One way that people can practice this is to silently repeat a word or phrase. This phrase is also commonly known as a mantra. Repeating positive self-affirmations through the day can have an overall calming effect and can be really supportive for many people, and especially caregivers. And then focusing on a current activity is also another potentially helpful mindfulness strategy. This strategy involves practicing mindfulness by focusing on the activity that you're doing. That sounds pretty straightforward. This is in order to bring yourself into the present moment rather than thinking about what has happened in the past. By focusing on the task at hand, such as washing the dishes, which is something many of us do all the time, one stops worrying about anything else in their life, even just for a few minutes. For example, when washing dishes, one can notice how much water pressure there is coming from the faucet and the temperature of the water, just to give you a couple of examples. The second column or list here includes very accessible and easily applied techniques, such as a person choosing activities that are relaxing for them. So this really involves kind of making a tailored plan of enjoyable activities for one's day that can really help them be more mindful generally. We also have here writing down your routine for the day as a form of mindfulness. Keeping a journal, which many people do, and there's lots of research around the benefits of journaling. Gentle yoga, either on your own or with a group, can also be really helpful in terms of cultivating mindfulness. Tracking sleep patterns, light to moderate physical exercise, even 5 to 10 minutes a day. Reflecting on and understanding one's thoughts, just taking time to reflect on, what am I thinking right now? What's coming up for me? These strategies can also be very beneficial. And then we also have practicing gratitude as listed here as a strategy. Gratitude for what has gone well and what do we have that's really supporting us and benefiting us. And I'll show an example of a gratitude journal in just a few moments. So now I would like to take you through a few examples of how caregivers can practice mindfulness to reduce their stress when they have time to apply these strategies throughout their day. The great news is that there are so many guided imagery, body scan, meditation, and other mindfulness exercises available for free on the internet. I am sharing a few exercises that I found that were referenced specifically for caregivers, but there are what feels like never-ending options available to caregivers online if they have more interest in practicing mindfulness. So let's work through this example. This is a mindfulness meditation exercise that incorporates breathing. I will read through this exercise and you're welcome to just listen or to practice the steps in real time as I read them. So we'll start out by finding a comfortable position. Your eyes can be closed or with a soft focus on a point in front of you. set your intention for your practice. For example, my practice today will be to cultivate patience and to take a break. Think about your intention for your practice. In just a moment, we will take 3 full in through your nose and out through your mouth breaths, and then return to a natural breath. As we breathe, focus your attention on your breath, gently labeling it in, out, in, out. Let's do that breathing together. In through your nose and out through your mouth, releasing that breath slowly. Another time, in through your nose. Fill those lungs. And then out through your mouth. Steadily and slowly. And we'll do that together one more time. In through your nose. And then slowly out through your mouth. When you feel your attention is steady, you can keep breathing and let go of these subtitles and experience your breath just as it is, being aware that you are aware. In a place of breath, you can also focus on any of your senses. Let's take a moment to do that. You can focus on sight, sound, taste, sensation, smell, or even your thoughts for a few moments. When you find that you are no longer paying attention to your breath or other objects of focus, just begin again. This is the practice, leaving the present and bringing yourself back again and again. All right, you can open your eyes and join us again. When your time is complete, which we're wrapping that exercise up now, consider the possibility of carrying this mindful awareness with you throughout the day. So that is just a brief example of a mindfulness exercise that a caregiver could easily walk themselves through. And of course, anyone can utilize for their benefit. Here is another mindfulness exercise designed to help people better understand their thoughts. The RAIN method includes 4 steps to manage difficult emotions mindfully. This method could be easily utilized by a dementia caregiver who experienced a challenging morning with the person they are caring for and needs to support themselves emotionally during, for example, a half-hour break or even a 20-minute break, something like that. The first step involves recognizing or acknowledging what you are feeling. You can ask yourself, what is happening inside me right now? You can gently label it non-judgmentally. For example, I am acknowledging that I feel sadness or that I feel frustration. The second step is allowing or accepting. This exercise encourages us to be willing to be present for our experience, no matter how unpleasant. Whatever you notice, simply let it be. Step 3 is to investigate. Unhook yourself from the object or story so you can witness the emotion with kindness and from an unbiased perspective. Mindfulness of body is a great technique here. What are you feeling in your body would be a great question for someone to ask themselves. Ask yourself, for example, what am I believing to be true in this moment? And then step 4 involves non-identification. Recognize you are not this emotion or experience. This emotion or experience does not define you. It is just a temporary event arising. And eventually it will be gone too. As they say, this too shall pass. And we want to watch the emotion with an attitude of natural presence. but not necessarily identifying with the emotion. So this is another helpful model, and a quick model too. This is something that a caregiver could spend 5 or 10 minutes utilizing in their day. Another easily applied mindfulness-based intervention for caregivers is gratitude journaling. And this, of course, is a great intervention for anyone or strategy for anyone. This approach can be applied whenever the caregiver has time, including in the morning or in the evening before they go to bed. Here are some typical instructions for a gratitude journal, though I want to emphasize that they don't need to take on a specific format. Here we see a prompt that reminds the caregiver that there are many times in our lives, both large and small, that we might be grateful about, and then ask them to think back over the past week and write down on the lines below, or write down, even on a scratch piece of paper, up to 5 things in your life that you are grateful or thankful for. Here are some things a caregiver might include in their gratitude journal. Of course, you can include anything, but these are the kinds of kind of simple but very meaningful reflections, gratitude reflections one might have, right? I am healthy enough to run. My mom makes me smile. I was resilient today. We had a nutritious and even you could say tasty and enjoyable lunch. And this is an example I found that wouldn't apply today as it's warm outside, but we bought a heater so that our house isn't cold. So just, reflecting on what are we truly grateful for and what is especially meaningful. This can help really reframe any negative emphasis or kind of obsession over what really went poorly in a day, and really bring us back to a place of mindfulness, especially around what is working well and what we're thankful for. Here is a sample mindfulness meditation journal with a more formal format where caregivers can capture the date, the location, time, how long they meditated, what methods they used, and what position they were in, such as sitting, laying down, or a yoga position, for example. In this specific example, the person can record the focus of their meditation and any thoughts or insights that occurred to them while they were meditating. What's great about this is that the caregiver can go back and reference this information, especially if they're having a really difficult time or they're struggling in some way and they think, I want to go back and look at how have I grown? How have I cultivated insight before? And maybe I can reflect on that and find a way to call upon that resilience, or some coping strategies from the past that I've forgotten. They could also use this format to capture, of course, what they're grateful for, as we talked about before, what they have accomplished, such as taking good care of their loved one, of course, and what they hope to work on, right? What was especially difficult about today, and what do I hope to work on in the future? And of course, there's lots of room for extra notes about anything that might come up while they're meditating. Again, this is just an example, and caregivers can also benefit, many caregivers can benefit from more of a freestyle stream of consciousness journaling experience as well. So I'd like to end today with some tips for practicing mindfulness to address caregiver stress. First, it's important to remember that it is called practice, not performance. I really like that idea. As a caregiver, or just as a person in general, you'll probably get distracted, and especially as a caregiver, you'll probably get distracted. This is normal and to be expected. The most important thing is that you start over and then start over again as often as you need to, with a gentle and kind attitude toward yourself. Regular practice for shorter intervals is usually better than one big practice each week. For example, you could start with 5 to 10 minutes 3 times a week, and work your way up to 10 to 20 minutes 5 days a week, if possible. And you can try that for let's say an 8-week regimen. and then hopefully kind of for the rest of your life, because this is beneficial not just for caregivers, but for our overall health and mental health over the course of our lifespan. You can use a kitchen timer, your phone, or an app such as the Insight Meditation Timer is one that's out there. I'm sure there's others. So you don't have to keep opening your eyes to keep time. That can be very distracting. And do your best to commit to practice the whole time. Again, I want to be realistic about the fact that that can be very hard for dementia caregivers. If something happens, you have to respond. You don't have that luxury, but to the extent that you can commit to it the entire time, it's really helpful to do that. Try to incorporate informal awareness breaks into your day. Stop and take a deep breath and feel your hands on the steering wheel. That's another way to be mindful, just to say, I'm driving and my hands are on the steering wheel. Actually taste the food you put into your mouth. This is another way of being mindful. Sometimes we're so busy, we're just eating and we don't even think about the flavor of what we're eating and how much we might be enjoying it. Again, another easily applied mindfulness strategy. Find a task you do every day and try to approach it mindfully, right? I'm going to sweep my porch and I'm going to think about how this is going to be a really clean porch afterwards, and it's beautiful outside and the wind is blowing a little bit. Just incorporating that mindfulness into an everyday activity. Even a few seconds can help your body interrupt what we call the fight or flight response, where you're having kind of more of a panic or heightened anxiety response, and bring you more peace and health through increased awareness of your surroundings and of your body. Caregivers can also try walking meditation with your eyes open, of course. Pay attention to your feet as they hit the floor or the ground, just noticing how that feels for your feet to be hitting the ground while you're walking. So often we are stuck in our heads, but especially as we care for those who are going through the dementia process of living with dementia. And so mindfulness really helps us, again, get out of our heads, if you will, and to take a break from some of those exhausting thoughts or obsessive thoughts that can kind of really rule our day and take over our experience. And it gives you time to rest your body and create more space in the moment to kind of live in the real time that you're in. And then the final recommendation I have is scheduling time for mindfulness. Now, that might not feel very mindful to have to schedule time, but for very busy dementia caregivers, really making that time and being intentional about making that time is one of the most effective strategies, because otherwise you simply might not get that time as we can imagine. Many of these strategies can be used without planning, and the planning will make it more likely that caregivers can actually utilize these strategies. Thank you so much for your attention today, and we will open it up for discussions and questions at this time.